see some of them here and some of the fish that I caught this year. I watch a lot of his videos in the winter time just to get through winter. It's fun watching his videos.
I didn't know WTF standard for Wisconsin trout.
That's what it means. I'm on the internet, but.
Right in the middle there. All right.
You want to hit the lights or?
Well, we could, unless people need to see while we're eating.
See if it makes any difference whatsoever. You might be the guy that watches. Oh, of course. Always that one. Mine's not so bad. Nice big bird. Nice fish. Yeah. Awesome fish. So, maybe I should have sung silver. Who knows? What time of year was it? Oh, that's big. Yes. I know that's not proper handling, but I'm literally up to my thighs in blood. There is nothing I can do again. That's why I came. That's why I came. That's a big brown. Nice big brown. I want to get some hair. This is gonna change. Maybe this is gonna change. That was a 6-hour walk. That was the only 6 hours.
Really? That's worth it.
Maybe that makes it better to get 2 people on. Good. Get a picture of this big fat guy. Doesn't that go? It goes. Let's try it again. Oh, he's so fat.
He does in fact go 20 on the dot. There he is. Beautiful fat 20-incher. Awesome. That's what I came for. Gotcha. Yeah, she's gone. Yeah. It only takes one fish here. Oh, shit.
I never said that. Not more than once.
Yes! Monster Brook, dude. Monster Brook. This might be a PB. Oh! Dude. This is an 18-inch. 19-inch almost perch trout. A fish is 19! Yes! Right. Oh my God!
That's one of the lures that handmade.
Well, non-Canadian personals. The ones that caught in there don't really count. Come on, let go, buddy.
I'm certain there are a few 20-inch.
Yeah, let's get that sucker washed off. That is a 19-inch bird trout, dude. Yes! Way to go! That's the fish of the day. Hands down. Not even close, dude. What an awesome bird trout here. I just want to get a double measurement on him just to make sure. Oh, I think he's 19. Okay. He's between 18 and 19. Oh my God, that's a beast. Look at that thing.
The best part of this sketch is I got a picture of him with a bear's hat on. My head's bigger than his, and the only.
That's 18. Oh, it's a
bear's hat. So
he's down there.
not that
He's
up
just under 19, about 18 3/4. Yes. Yes. That. He's pissed. Oh, beautiful. What a beautiful fish. Awesome. Yes. 18 3/4 right there. You, sir, have made my luck in a year.
I walked right past that spot and said, "Oh, that looks like trash." I went right past it, and then he cast it. Beautiful. Again, the landowner permission helps a lot. Yeah, see, even at its deepest here, I wasn't happy about that. Here we go. Yeah. And it's bigger than that. This guy's bigger than that, dude. 20. Real close, 19 and a half. This is fish, the brook, and he caught it in the next video, all in the same hour. And on top of that, another 30, 40 fish, all in that 17, 18, 15. Rookie sand browns.
He grabbed lightly.
A little better camera.
But yeah, he's funny, I think. It's gotta be real close anyway. Put a fat on that.
I don't know where I'm pointing.
No, that's good. Not too far down,
Yeah,
yeah.
that is a big one. You're not kidding.
Here, yeah, pull. He's gonna take two.
You're gonna need 2 hands for that measurement. Put the net between your eyes in case you drop them.
There we are. 20.
It's about a quarter. Big old fat female.
Look at that thing. Beautiful fish.
Well, this might be a tough day today. 18 or 15?
No, that's 8.
18 is a half ounce plus of weight, and it's got the natural large inner blade that they
While you were playing.
2 3/4 inch blade.
Pull him in, beach him. Oh, yeah. Yeah. Woo-hoo. Oh, that's good. Look at that. Oh, I think he's bigger. Yeah, he's trying. Salmon jackal. That's all. Oh, boy. All right, that's what I've been waiting for. Yeah, I'll say 20 on the dot.
Right on there. Yeah. 19 and a half. I was getting.
Yeah. Whew. The beast. And verdict is right on 20.
Just
20 on the nuts.
Just barely 20.
20 on the nuts. Beautiful
Good
fish.
looking fish.
Yeah.
I just went straight to the beach. I was like,
I was too far away. I was way back there. I was never going to get to you, Tim. That's a 4 pound plus.
4 pounds of fish right there. All right.
Woo-wee. Holy crap, it's a tiger. My first fish is a tiger. That's the first one of the year. It's amazing. Sweet. In true form, he did the first on the drop. Let's get a look on the other side. Yeah, there's a cool tiger trout. Talking to a guy here.
This is the best rookie that I caught.
Nice one. Very nice. That's for sure. Oh, somebody. There's no way in hell this dude was cut off. Jesus. He's really messed up. I don't know how he did that race. Less than an eye. Stop it, dude.
I've had anywhere between 6 or 8 batteries with me. Usually don't use that many, but sometimes I get charged one and stuff and I put it in there. Got a waterproof pack.
Let's get some water. Jesus. It's absolutely insane. Fish. It's about 16, maybe more. Just a beautiful Berkey, skinny and long. He is 16 and a quarter. Nice fish. Very nice Berkey. There he goes. Jeez. It's gonna be fine, folks. There he goes. I'm always balancing how hard I'm squeezing versus how much I can keep the fish under control. And in that case, that guy just was not having any of it. I mean, this seems low percentage.
I think it's gonna be, yeah, low percentage the whole thing. Oh, got him. Nice one, Ron. Okay, low percentage.
Grab the net.
You on?
Yeah, I think I am. Grab the net.
Good one, Ron.
Grab the net. It's a nice coho.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Nice fish, Ron. Boom. Low probability.
Let's check. I think I'm on.
Oh, Ron.
All right, go. Yeah, nice coho. All right.
The old man home for the old man. Nice job, brother. Nice job. Great looking fish.
Yeah.
Just a great little bulldog to do. Oh, he's up. Oh, he's up. Yeah, let me get the face though. Let's partner out and put a wiggle in him.
Yeah, definitely a fresh coho. Holy cow.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful.
He's trying, folks. All right. 20.
I would say 21.
Okay,
well, the day, okay, well.
Oh, wow, he's so fresh. I don't think I've ever seen one that fresh. What are they running to?
Well, now our day's looking way better, my friend.
Our plan changes. This is a fantastic fish. Whew.
Okay, folks.
He's gonna be bloody. He's gonna be bloody. Just got to see this fish. It's so beautiful. This is about, I don't think I've ever seen a coho this fresh. Look at how silver, jet silver that guy is.
Beautiful.
So, he goes, I'll get a measure on him. I'm guessing 22. That fish does in fact go 22.
Nice.
All right.
Fish fish on the board. And what was it? Can you tell the crowd? What have they not been able to resist? Oh, I take that back. That's a, uh-oh, maybe with a special twist for that special Mac. Just for that special someone. Oh, yeah. Nice fish, Ron. Woo! That's nice. Woo! I don't like that. I get this silver 18.
So I cast braid straight to a single snap, just to switch out lures as I fish. I've never met a fish in Wisconsin that needs a leader, but that's good fishing. They're not shy of 24 on braid or anything like
Yeah,
that.
seen that a lot. Great.
No, and when I'm up north on Lake Run 6 on Run 20.
This is a real nice steelhead. He's in the net. It might be a keeper. He choked it. It's definitely a steelhead. Stop it, dude. That fish does go 26. He's legal. Okay, legal ceiling. All right.
Pound braid, 8.5 foot hole, size 4 pounds of reel.
There we go. Gonna take care.
Still reeling. It took a little drag, when you heard the little clinking, that was dragging, but right now it's just coming. was so low, right now, there's 3 or 4 of those gates open. But they will jump.
No touch.
30 inches down I realized here I was like trying to, it is more than 3.5 foot down the water there. So I figured I'm just gonna let them calm down and I'll come out around. But then my buddy has to come right away.
Hey, you did. Just trying to figure out how I'm going to put them in that little net. That is a nice one. First place. I saw Nick for a little while. All right. We got smoker food now. One game that we did have open. 26, that's all?
So thank you for going through that. And again, certainly, I don't know everything about spin fishing, but I will give you just a little bit of what I use in terms of gear. You saw me fish really 3 different types of fishing. Inland streams, all of the stuff at the beginning of the year. I'm using a 5'6" medium ugly stick. And I use a carbon one. The DX2s are fine too. And I use a 2000 size Penn Battle Free reel, which has fantastic drag and a spool that's got an insert so you can tie braids straight through it without having to use electrical tape or something to keep it from spinning on the spool. 10-pound Power Pro braid is what I use for the inland streams. The casting and accuracy of that line and that setup is, I can put it on a quarter size spot in paying attention.
You tie directly to the braid.
I use just a single snap. So if you have a swivel where the ball bearing part is, just the duo snap is what they call just that snap part. And I tie directly to that with a Palomar knot. I've never used the leader. I've never seen a fish that was afraid of braided line. 10-pound Power Pro is about 2-pound mono equivalent thickness. So it's a real thin line, and the good news is if you don't like losing lures, you can almost tear a tree trunk out of the string with 10-pound braid. It's easy to bend some hooks straight, get things off, and get your collection back anyway. And then you saw the steelhead and coho when I'm up north, and I go to Superior because I'm on the west side of the state. It's closer to go there than it is to go to Lake Michigan. But up there, I'll use a 6'6" medium heavy. I use a Shimano rod, a really cheap one, just an FX series, $25 rod. The braid, the guides on that rod can handle braid. I've used rods where 20-pound braid and catching the bigger fish, it'll cut those guides, and eventually you're going to cut your line at those fish. But I use 20-pound braid for that setup. Again, same directly to a snap. I use a snap that's at about 40-pound test, and I don't like going any bigger than that. When I'm inland, sometimes I'll even drop down to one that's 17 pounds, so that's a size 00 that I'll tie on there just to keep it from having any effect on the lure or flash around. And then this last thing that you saw here is something I've only done now twice, 2 seasons in a row. Last year, when I went, the water not being in drought state, I was mentioning, 4 or 5 of those dam gates were open and the fish were much closer. And I caught a 35-inch, 20-plus pound brown, so 20.5 pounds. And again, I know they're sea frolins. I know they're all stock fish coming straight in from Lake Michigan. I will tell you that it was like deep sea fishing on that pier. And it was very difficult this year. That was the only fish that I caught in 3 days of fishing. As where before, I think I caught upwards of 8 to 10 on any given day. And there were other guys fishing.
that's the kind of thing that if you go on the weekend, you are surrounded by people everywhere. So not really my type of thing, but to see those fish is pretty awesome. And that pole setup, that's an 8.5 foot Shimano FX. I think this is actually an ugly stick big water rod, so kind of like a catfish rod, if you could imagine. That's what it was in terms of thickness and ability to send out a 1 ounce Castmaster or a 1 ounce little Clio. That's what you're fishing in front of that dam. Having lived in Marshfield for 12 years, I never even knew there were trout streams around the center of the state at that time. And I didn't start trout fishing until I moved to Ellsworth, because it's literally like a neighborhood pastime out there. There are so many streams available in the Driftless. Like I said, I fished between 150 and 200 outings a year since 2013. I only repeat on streams because I like them. I would not have to repeat on streams where I live, even fishing that often. That area of the Driftless is characterized by the karst geology, meaning that it's got limestone porous bluffs that the rainwater leaches through down into the aquifer. We have a lot of streams that are bedrock bottom because all the soil is gone. It is hallmarked by fresh stream water. You'll be walking an elevation of the bluffs and you'll just see a spot like you turned on your garden hose. And it's easily 5 degrees colder than anything near the stream. Our water stays at about 41 degrees all year round. The springs are 41 degrees all year round. None of the Driftless water, except in very few slack spots, ever freezes. None of these streams freeze. They're the warmest water in the dead of winter, and it's the coldest water in the heat of summer. It's really an interesting phenomenon. So I tell people, oh yeah, I'll be trout fishing on January 1st. I will be, unless it's -10 or something like that, where my body can't handle it. But if it's 15 or 18 or 20 degrees, even just going up a few degrees, I'll get out there. And it's an interesting time in early season. You don't need to be out at sunrise. You don't need to fish at dusk. In fact, the best time to fish is you need peak temperature and go an hour before and an hour after. That's when the fish are going to be willing to strike a spring. There's an absence of flies until we start to see some stoneflies. They'll come out on snow, but they're usually first. But at the beginning, there's nothing. And as January ends, you start to see some bugs, and the little fish come for bugs, the big fish come for the little fish. And that's how it works out. The best time, in my estimation, of doing that type of inland fishing, March, April, May, I think is always consistently. Bigger fish are not laying under logs or sitting in banks. They're out trying to put the feed bag on after a long winter with no bugs, and prey also not around them. The interesting thing about doing this, what I really enjoy is being on the stream. My wife doesn't eat fish. My kids are older than college age. They don't live in our house. And so I will end up keeping a few fish in the beginning of the season, and then I try to do my best to keep fish as solidly handled as I can and get it back in the water. I will not put back a dead fish unless, of course, it's illegal to possess that fish. But I will not put back a dead fish. I don't eat a dead fish. When I'm spin fishing, I would say that the fatality rate is less than 1%. I see that perhaps maybe once every outing, once every 3 or 4 outings, there might be a gill hook fish that spin fishing creates that fatal injury. When you pull the fish out and it's hemorrhaged and you've got gills outside the mouth, that fish is never making it back. I don't care if you pat them on the back, comb their hair, nothing's going to work. And so in that case, it's something that we watch for early season too. I fish throughout the entire year. I think that the June and July lull that I see is due to the bugs being at their highest peak. There's so much other food in the river. It just seems like there's some weeds. We tend to get less of that than is here in the center of the state. But what I noticed is they've got so much other stuff to eat. When we have a caddis hatch in the driftless, you will literally see fish with your naked eye in rocks picking off caddis, and you could run a spinner through there 100 times and you will not divert them. Same with tricos. We end up getting clouds of tricos that you gotta do this. It's like fog on the inside of your windshield, and when that occurs, you might as well just put your spin fish pole away and do something else. Not hit the spinner. It's always been perplexing to me. What exactly is the spinner trying to do? My buddy says, well, it's a wounded minnow. I've never seen a wounded minnow drop from the sky. And then I thought to myself, maybe it's an insect. Maybe it's like a big giant bug that they want to clamp down on. But then what bug do you know that goes downstream in a straight line? And we've had this conversation umpteen times and we still haven't come to a conclusion. Other than that, it's just pure instinct reaction. And when you match a hatch and when you're fly fishing, you're trying to select the prey that the fish might eat. Unless you're streamer fishing, which might be a lot like spinner fishing. Just getting that reaction, that instinct bite, that flee or fight kind of reaction out of the animal. I think that's where we lie on it. I don't think we've come to that decision.
Okay, I've been watching the YouTube channel, so we have some questions coming in. And first of all, one of them is from Perry Nikolai, and it's not so much a question, he's thanking for recording. And he says, well, maybe now some people want to go spin fishing with me. And also, there's an open invitation from Perry Nikolai. But we also have the DNR on here, so you're not in trouble at all. Tim Parks is on here. He says, what's it like fishing with Sasquatch?
I never really thought that trout fishing videos would get much attention. I started with the filming because I liked the scenery and I liked to see the fish. And of course, I like to see my own catch. Sasquatch is a completely ageless soul who doesn't have a bad bone in his body. He lives up north. He has a job up there. And I met him through the internet of all places. So here we are talking to people on the internet. And Sasquatch was holding out these giant lake-run fish that he had caught. And I thought to myself, I need to fish with that person. And that's how it happened. So fishing with Sasquatch, he's always animated. He's never short on good time.
The other one is I was wondering what Ron's superior trib setup was. Maybe you mentioned that, but if you
Lake Superior tribs, I will rod 6 foot 6 inch. I use a Shimano FX medium heavy 2-piece. If you're going up north, I encourage you to get a 2-piece pole. If you have to walk the trails that are present on the Brule, you do not want to carry a 6'6" straight pole that you can't collapse down. It will make your life miserable. So a 2-piece, I use a Penn Battle 3 and 3000 size, which holds about 165, 75 yards of 20-pound braid. I go braid mainline straight to a duo snap, and I use that snap to switch out spinners and lures as much as I can.
He also made the comment, he said, it's okay to harvest, Ron. He said, that's why we have harvest regulations. That's from a fisheries biologist here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If you don't like fish and you're trout fishing, I don't know. I suppose there's nothing wrong with that. But they are delicious. Our inland trout are consistently rated the #1 consumptive fish in the state because of the clean, outstanding, and excellent water supplies in which they live, and that they have relatively short lives. If you are eating a 13-inch brown, that's probably a 3 or 4-year-old fish, and he's probably not going to make it past 7 or 8 in the stream. Brookie's even shorter lifespan. That 18 3/4 brookie that you saw was probably a 7, 8, maybe a 9-year-old fish. But they're delicious, and I cook them all different ways: smoked, baked, fried, you name it. They're wonderful fish and a good source of dietary.
Now we got Perry Nikolai back in here again. He says, big lure, big fish, small lure, small fish. What do you consider the sweet spot of sizing a lure?
So I think big fish will hit small lures. The problem with a small lure is getting it to where the fish are. So you may have heard someone say, I caught that fish on a size 0 Meps or something like that. Well, try and put a size 0 Meps down to the bottom of the bend in the Boyce Brule when it's running 300 cubic feet per second. That thing will stay on the top. You'll watch it float across the top. You'll never be able to sink that down. So I judge the weight of my lures on 2 conditions. Fish make an evaluation. How much effort and energy am I going to have to spend to potentially get that payoff of that catch? And in the early season, January, February, I'm consistently starting with size 4. I'll go to size 2 if I need to. If that doesn't get a bite, I go home. But that's the time when you want to present something smaller that looks easier to catch, that is less threatening, and that fish is going to be more likely to bite in the early season. I'm to half-pound 15 lures, usually by the end of in April. And then as the season progresses, I'll move to a over half-ounce Panther Martin equivalent size 18, and that's 7/8 inch blade, and I'll have some of those here for you guys to look at. So again, I prefer the bigger lures. I will also tell you they're easier to spin fish with. A half-ounce lure you can drop like a dime on a football touchdown pass. You try to move a 0 or a 2 or a 4 and have accuracy, the wind is going to take it. It's going to be extremely difficult to control. It's not going to flex your rod for you to be able to think and dunk something if you want to drop right next to a tree 6 feet away. You're never going to do that with a 0 or 2. And I cast a lot, and I can't do it. The half-ounce lure, I bet I could take matchsticks out of people's mouths with a half-inch spin lure.
And one more question is from me. And as far as the hooks that you use, are you using treble with barbs on them, or it seems like you get the hook out pretty quick?
I do use treble with barbs. I use a size 6 4X Moostad Kingfisher. These are super strong hooks. The size 18 and 15 biggest lures that I use, when you buy those from the store, they're going to come with a number 2 hook. I don't like a hook that big. When I'm spin fishing, they tend to hang out easier on rocks and big logs. So I use that size 6 hook on anything over a half-ounce. The smaller lures, a size 4 and 2, I'll usually use a size 8 treble hook, even smaller. You know, every hook is dangerous to fish. It's the sharp pointing part that is the biggest problem. Obviously, I'm also using a real needle nose pliers. I know guys like Hemos. I can tell you on some of these larger fish that take a size 6 treble, you're going to damage that fish even worse with a pliers that you can't get torqued on and that you can't take out cleanly. So I have a nice stainless 8-inch needle nose pliers that I keep right in my top vest pocket. And I'm conscious that I want to work quickly and get that fish unhooked. I do not pinch barb. No, all barbs.
When you smoke, what's your recipe for smoking?
Oh, I've got this down to a science. I had a video of them smoking, but I won't show that. But the brine that I use to smoke fish with is a quart of water, 3 ounces of a coarse or kosher type of salt, and 1 cup of brown sugar.
Yeah, it's very similar to what I do.
Nothing more, nothing less. Brown sugar. At that salt load, you don't have to be worried about over curing that fish, right, and you don't have to worry about it getting too salty. You can leave them overnight and then get them out. You always want to dry your fish off, and you want to let what's called a pellicle form, which is an enzymatic. It gets kind of sticky. The fish texture changes on the outside of the fish, and that's then when they're ready to.
I'll trade some notes with you on email because I do something very similar.
Yeah. I've tried, I'll put some garlic in sometimes, some chili peppers and that kind of stuff. But I'm sold on that one because I used to use like a 2-to-1 salt. And half the time, if I wasn't watching the clock, that fish would either come out way too salty or it was cured, done. It was over with by the time I took it out of the fry.
Almost eat it before you put it on the smoker.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, freshwater fish have bacteria. We don't want to eat raw freshwater fish. I probably would if I was starving, but saltwater fish, those are the ones you can cut meat. But I love sashimi too. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've read a lot about fatality studies after, fishing, both fin fishing and fly fishing. And in fact, the UW-Madison, along with the U.S. UW-Madison, the Wisconsin DNR, and I think it might have been the U.S. Forest Service or U.S. Department of Agriculture. They did a study on trout mortality and also other studies that they've done. But treble hooks are generally not any more fatal to fish than fly fishing hooks. And the fatality rate, I know you said it's 1%, but it's actually higher than that because fish will die after you release it. So the fatality rate is anywhere from 8.5% to 4.5% to 5%. And the deal there is that in very fertile streams, or even like in the streams that you fish, if you take a fish out, it just means that more fish can survive. Every stream has a carrying capacity. And fish, it looks like streams that your fish are very fertile, but you're really not hurting the fishery by harvesting trout, because it just leaves more room for other trout to use the food in the stream.
Yeah, that's very, I don't disagree with anything you said, and it's very, I've also looked at that research related to hookings. And the top research factor on fish mortality, the number one factor, is how long that fish is out of the water.
Right.
Period. That's the number one factor. Then it's handling, wet hands, transfer of your own bacteria, the protective coating on the fish, disturbing their immune system. That might not be something you see till later. And then the third, of course, is obvious bleeding, defects, and wounds. But realistically, that amount of time that the fish is out of the water has the highest research correlation for causing fatality. That doesn't seem like rocket science. Fish out of water, right? Bad thing. What I've heard about hooks, and I haven't seen any real definitive study that compares trebles versus barbed or non-barbed single hooks, but what I've seen is method. So if you are using a hook in your bait fishing, and in a bait fishing presentation, you might have that completely on the bottom with a weight, and those fish tend to get gullet hooked more often. So I do think that overall fishing hooks are hazardous to fish, right? I mean, whether it's on a streamer, a fly, a size 22, or a size 6 treble, there is that potential that happens. And so I try to be at least conscious and somewhat spiritual with what I'm doing. If I think I'm in a position where the fish are overactive and I've had a clear fatality right in front of me, I change my habits about what I'm doing. I might go pick a different stream. And if there are mortality events occurring, I can tell you I've been in the same places a number of times that I don't see physical evidence of it. I'm sure it happens, but I don't see, it would not be uncommon in the Driftless to catch 80 fish in a single bridge-to-bridge walk. And I don't see fish bellying over even the next day or the day after. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm sure that fish have stress that you can't physically tell when you release them. One other thing that I heard about fish handling was being cautious even with small fish about re-entry. This camera has a fisheye lens. So if you're thinking, oh man, that fish is getting dropped really hard, trust me, he's not. I'm 5'7". It's going from here. It's just falling in the water. And when I'm squeezing or looking like I'm squeezing a fish, people will say, that fish is gurgling, you're squeezing it to death. I've just reeled the fish in with his mouth gaping open, skating across the water. He's filled up with, I wouldn't even just put him on my hand and his belly pressing, he's gonna go, he's gonna burp. So I am constantly trying to measure the force that's needed to not squeeze that fish and still maintain control. And it's just just, that's how it is.
And we've got the DNR jumping in on us here, so he's saying that he said that the hooking mortality question with treble hooks is probably the mortality differences are with live versus artificial lure. Is the biggest. I would guess you're saying because you have live bait, the fish is gonna ingest it more readily.
Yeah, that's
I would think
exactly what he's talking about. Yeah, if you've got a night crawler on the bottom, that it's gonna take longer in reaction. I mean, when I'm fishing with a spinner, fish hook themselves. I mean, you might see me look like I'm setting a hook, but that fish has just nabbed into that moving lure. And I always fish upstream when I'm spin fishing. If you go down, the only way I would go downstream is if it's the only way I could cast, it's the only way I get to that piece of water. Because as soon as you even put your big toe in the stream, there's going to be a cloud of sediment, and every fish that's back there is going to be gone. And we know that fish position themselves facing forward in the stream to collect free meals coming down the stream. They will see you with 180 peripheral vision if you go downstream. Going upstream, I've been able to stand in water that may have a small riffle, extend my pole, and catch brook and brown trout 2 feet away from me just by dropping my pole. They are not disturbed. They are not spooked. And that is there's even a difference if you're on the bank and you go upstream. You're elevated enough to where the fish will still have an advantage on you for vision sighting. If you are standing in the water and going in upstream, I literally just had fish, bump into my feet. It's going to swim away when I'm there.
Unless you're as tall as Frank.
If those fish go like this, okay, people say that fish cannot see you when you're behind them. And what they're thinking about is because the vision of the fish, they're thinking about a fish just standing straight ahead. When it's going like this, it's swimming in the water, it's turning its head to one side, that right eye can see behind it. When it turns the other way, that left eye can see right behind it. So there's a very narrow window in which you are truly invisible. If you're slightly to the right or slightly to the left, and the fish is swimming, it can see you. The question is, does it really notice you? So that's one issue. The other issue I wanted to mention is that fly fishermen get this idea that they're better than most because they're using flying, they aren't killing fish, and they'll talk about 50 fish days or 60 fish days. And what you have to realize, you're going to kill about 3.5% of the fish. You may release them alive, but that fish will die statistically because they caught fish, they put them in pens, they look at them for a week in these pens, and the fish will die 2 and 3 days later in these live pens. So if you're catching 50 fish, you're killing statistically, maybe 2 fish, right? So the most successful fishermen kill the most fish, even if they are releasing the fish. Don't try not to be high and mighty about how you're releasing all your fish and you're not killing fish. It's a blood sport, So fish are going to die if we fish. That's
So I have several streams in the Driftless that are close to me that I have walked every mile from Mississippi River to their headwaters. Because they're so close on the drive, I get a chance to check out streams in that manner. So when you are wanting to spin fish, the time of year matters a lot on where you might want to fish. And remember, in the winter, the fish are at spring because it's the warmest part of the stream. In the summer, they're at springs because it's the coldest part of the stream. So a good strategy is targeting springs, period. Now, depending on the time of year, springs can be harder or easier to get to. But we have a migratory situation out of larger rivers that might be warm water, non-classified streams that are trout streams that are designated dump into. And in the early season, you will find trout everywhere in the driftless, even in those non-classified warm water stream areas. And as they migrate, they will pick a condition that's okay. They don't have a salmonoid type imprint when they're going back to their birthplace. But what they do know is, I want to be where my best chance for food is and where my best chance for the warmest water, when it's still below zero at night and 20 degrees during the day, they want to see 41-degree springs. And that's just water fishing. I have caught wonderful fish non-designated territory that are designated much further up, in some cases miles up. So again, I tell people on my videos, I don't name places, I don't advertise places where I fish. If someone asks me, I'll tell them, check out the DNR maps. There are no secrets out here, right? These are all in books. It's all cataloged. And I encourage people to get off their couch, get off the computer, and go try it out. You'll probably like it. But I'm not in any way interested in really giving up the hard legwork that I put into it. And it's might sound a little selfish, but that's my encouragement to people. Now, if they want to go to the trouble and they want to come over and they want to say, hey, are you available to fish? As long as they're not a lunatic, I'll be happy to fish with them. But again, I'm not going to say.
How did you ever meet Jason?
We have not fished together, but you've been over our way, and I've talked to Jason on Facebook a few times, and he's talked to my fishing partnership.
Did you go to Trap Fest too in the end? I don't remember if you went to.
I've been to a couple of the Trap Fests.
These little just get together in Southern Driftless, and I thought maybe he had been to one or two. That maybe how I first met you, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. Other questions though about spin fishing, and I'll switch to getting the lure factory out and show you that so you can see what goes into it.
You ever use mono?
I started using mono, and literally the casting that I do, I would just carry extra spools of mono and get ready to cut off when I get the giant bird's nest. I like the feel of mono, and it handles well with trout because they tend to be a very potent, jerky kind of fish, and so that stretch is nice. The braid is, of course, no stretch, and you have to be a little more finesse with how you pull a trout in and how you move the reel. And kind of thinking about pulling and reeling down like you might on a boat is a technique when fish are really going haywire that works a little better.
Shark stroking.
Yeah.
You ever have problems with the braid fraying? When I fish braid, it just ends up fraying on me. I'll cast the lure and
Yeah, braid is nice and strong, but it is not as abrasion resistant as like a fluorocarbon is. And you do have to regularly take a look at your braided line, particularly the last 6 feet on reel-ins and casts and at the snap. And that will fray. I try very hard that before I even let my first cast go in the morning, I have recut and tied fresh. I've lost fish because I've been too lazy to recut and tie again. But you have to watch it, particularly if you're in a very rocky area. And braid is a line too that, despite how strong it is, if you get stuck and then you cut across a sharp rock, you're done. It's gonna cut like butter. So there's some drawbacks to braid, but overall the instantaneous feedback, because you can feel every little nick, hint, fish bite, and the casting ability.
Yeah, I asked.
No memory, no bird's nests. Braid by far. I would never fish without 10-pound power for braid on mine.
You ever had a bird nest in braided? I have.
Not with Power Pro.
And it's tough to get out. I tried Power Pro, I tried them all. PLA, I tried them all.
So I have two tips for that. I have 2 tips for that. If you are a person who likes to stop the lure by clicking the auto bail, Yeah. That is when you loop the braid, because the braid is so limp, it will fall down over the spool. You reeled in and you don't think about it, and then boom, you set it out. So I do actually a lot of hand braking with my casts. In fact, I'll even just grab the whole spool and stop the cast right where I want it to hit the water, and then I'll close it. Because that is the one thing with braid. If you close that with the handle particularly while the lure is still in the air, it's going to stop midstream, and it's 50-50 chance you're going to fall over the arbor of the spinning reel, and that's going to cause you trouble.
That's why saying that you stop the cast. Are you putting your finger on the lip of the spool and then, you know?
I'll do this, and I'll just use this whole hand to cup the arbor, and then I'll close the valve.
Okay.
Yeah. This one from the motorcycle accident might be bent in a way that can't be duplicated though, but that's okay.
So, whenever you're ready, we got, I think, as much lights as we can get on right now. If you want to do your demo, that's something I think would be pretty neat there.
People see that. That's the size 18 Panther marking. It's 2 7/8. So when I say something like I'm fishing an 18, that's going to be a ½ ounce and sometimes ½ ounce size spinner. And I fish often enough that you certainly can make these spinners with a nice German-made round nose pliers. You can even do them with the normal pliers. If you're going to make more than 5 or 6 of them though, and you don't want to lose your fingertips, this is just much more consistent and enables foolproof hooks, bends, eyelets, all that kind of stuff. So this one in particular is made by Twist Tech. I think they went out of business with the pandemic, actually. I think they did. And they occasionally, you'll find them on eBay, and I've seen them retail, like $90 retail. This one I got off eBay for $40 many years ago now. And most of the parts hold up to the stainless wire. It's a pretty thick cable. That tape is too thick.
See here.
That's it.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
How about a walk?
There's a cable right there too. It works. That works.
You should sit on the book.
So in my house in Ellsworth, we have a guest room, but we also have what I call a fish room. And in there I have racks of lures that I probably have 400 lures sitting on the shelf, along with large pictures, poster-sized pictures of some of these fish that you've seen. Rod and rack, hold on, it's got to go this way. And over the past, I don't own any type of sweatshop in Malaysia or anything, so I'm not like in business to make lures, but I do sell some lures occasionally. A couple guys have used them, and what I like about the spinners that I make is, like I told you, I get to make a custom size hook, smaller than the ones that you buy in the store generally, and then I use a custom wire too. So I use a .034 inch stainless steel wire in my lures. And that thicker wire, if you've ever taken a fish card out of the box and caught one decent fish or snagged a tree log and the thing was bent and you could never get it back again, it's because the wire is thin. This wire is way more malleable. It bends back straight. I'll send one of those. So the extra heavier wire is absolutely a plus for me. It's worth it right there to carry out one that I caught one decent fish and that lure's going in the trash box. It's just, you can't get it straight. The other thing that I like is I get to specifically have the sizes that I want for lures. I like the larger lures, but I can change that up based on either a blade that has a clevis, more like a MEPS type lure, or I can stick with an inline blade, which has the hole directly in the blade. I also use only solid brass bearings. If you've ever had a spinner that the blade seems to click, after a while it catches, that manufacturer is using a split bearing that's actually pressed. It's a cheaper part and they fail over time. And I don't that jam the wire back up into the body and then have the little tab coming out of the top, which also decays over time, catches spinners, binds the bearings, prevents smooth action. Now, there's no problem for anybody buying a store-bought lure. I buy some occasionally if I'm somewhere and I haven't planned to fish, but then the opportunity came and I got to fish, pick up a few spinners. But up a lot about things like colors, UV, when to use what colors, how, what, why. I am convinced that all of the fluorescent colors, UV, all the rest of that is for the fishermen. I am 100% convinced of that. I have caught fish on lures that didn't have a speck of paint left on them. And as long as they were still spinning true, that bait would catch fish. And their attraction to the spinner is irresistible. When they're ready to do that.
Color on light or dark?
So I think that I use the gold versus, so I will make I only make two colors of lures. Gold with a gold blade and silver with a silver blade. And I tend to use the silvers in cloudier water,
Yeah.
and I tend to use the gold in sunnier, clearer water. I can tell you though, there's no research to back that up. I think when they're going to bite these spinners, they would eat any one of them that came within them. But what I don't do is switch to things black or stripes, smiley faces, any other colors. I like them. I like the way they look. I can just tell you that aside from perhaps fish up north, maybe liking a MEPS type blade with a clevis, which is this type of blade. So this type of blade has the hole right there at the top. So it uses a clevis, a little device that goes around the wire and allows it to spin. These inline, the wire ends up going straight through the body, just like a Panther Martin looks. So you've got an inline blade and a clevis blade. There are places where these work better than these. I don't know why, but they do. Yes, sir.
What about the idea that it's the vibration that the blade puts out that attracts the trout because it's giving off vibrations that are minnow or,
Yep. I've heard that. I do think that makes a heck of a lot of sense. We know trout have a lateral line.
Right.
We know that trout have a fourth eye structure too that is UV sensitive. They have a wavelength vision that's probably keyed into things that are purple and blue the best, but they probably see some color. Again, I think if that might be a part of the instinct that it feels that thumping.
UV vision goes away in adult trout, so it's used.
And then gone?
Yeah, it's used in young trout because they feed on food that does reflect some UV light. But but that the chromophore recedes and goes away.
I tell you, I really wish I knew what the heck trout see, because you'll hear things like, well, once the lure hits the water, how far can they see it anyhow with the diffusion and refraction? But that's the same animal that can pick off a mayfly 12 inches above, and they're 14 inches below, and the water's refracted, diffracted.
That's their
As well, I don't know. I wish I could see what they saw.
But see, trout
That's one of the size 6, 4X.
Trout seed was 1/14th division that we have, because we have what's called a macula, which has a concentration of cells for fine vision. Trout have their visual cells distributed equally across their retina. So when you hear people have macular degeneration, they lose their fine vision, because that's what humans use to see.
I don't know. I wish I did know what they saw. But that's a double bullet. That's a heavy body. That's close to 0.35. And so by the time you add the blade, the wire, the hook, you're half ounce or slightly over half ounce.
You're a fish from Mississippi. I might not.
You get these online?
All of these parts, there's multiple retailers online to buy these parts. My favorite is Lure Parts Online. I think they're my favorite. And then something I have gone to do to kind of stylize and put some color in lures just for my own satisfaction, because I'm not so sure the trout care. But I will put at least these attention getters, so crappie jig, 1.5 inch crappie jig, over the treble hook before I secure it to the lure. And I use a split ring, so when these get chewed up or rotten or break, I can just pull the hook off, hit it on the file, and then get it back on. So my thought here was to show you a couple of these getting made, and so you can see what that process involves.
Have you ever thought about scenting them or not?
You know, it has come to my attention in fishing steelhead that people do like a scent product. I have used them on like fake beads and fake rope, not so much avail.
I put them on my spinners and I can't say one way or the other.
Yeah.
Try it.
I would say. So this wire comes on a 1/4 pound reel, which is about 175 feet of it. And it'll have sometimes a slight bend like that. And I mentioned to you that these things are very malleable. You can see it's easy to bend with your fingers. But you have to get the structures in there to put the lure together. So when you're making an inline spinner, the first thing you have to do is make the hole on the top that you're going to.
What's your measurement there? You have them pre-cut?
About a half fingernail. No, it's
No, I mean, you have it pre-cut, so how
about 4 inches,
4
I think,
inches.
is what I go with. And this machine just makes things very easy. You kind of tilt it till it's giving you the V. Nice near perpendicular V. And you go back in the jig machine. Jason, put your hand on there.
Yep.
And with a gentle pull towards the edge of the jig, you just turn. So,
My wife makes earrings.
yeah, very similar machine. The earring wires tend to be smaller, so people do musket size lures in this machine, and there's an additional jig that you can use wire over 0.040. But the next part is really quite easy. You take your inline spinner. You need a bearing. So I will put a bearing on there. Right? Starting to look like a spinner, right? Now you need the bottom half of this. And I use a split ring, so I like when the spinner comes to the bottom, the blade comes to the bottom of the bait, And with a split ring here, I get an extra about 1/8 of an inch. So I like this one without any extra beads. But I do sometimes to space out and even the lure up. I'll add something like a roll egg like that. And if I was gonna put a straight hook right on here and not a split ring, that's what I'm talking about, the blade ending up at the bottom of the lure presentation. That's about the size that I think makes lures cast easier, less prone to tangle. I can tell you if you fish spinners and you're tangling it around the spinner as you go, I'm not saying you're a bad caster, but I will just tell you it is 100% your cast. If you do overhand cast with spinners, you're gonna let this thing go from the pole, right? And it's gonna start out going like that, and it's gonna turn, and it's gonna hit the water this way. Just out of aerodynamics. And if you've let that fall in the water, and it's not very swift water, it's got no chance of untangling that. You're gonna wrap it every single time. So just like I told you, I control my distance here, but I'm also doing by stopping that by hand before the cast is ended is jerk that hook to the back of my cast. Cuts it down by 99%. Still will happen every once in a while, but it does cut it down. And
Those blades, when they hit, they actually will freely spin.
that's the beauty of these inline blades. They'll helicopter as they go. So you get action when they drop. Yeah, when you have one of these, it just looks like a dead stick falling, a dead rock falling to the bottom of the river. This would helicopter on the way.
You know when your spinner's spinning, you know when it's not.
Well, this size blade, you'll feel it. You'll feel it. You'll feel this one with a 5/6 medium rod. You can feel it right away.
I use a 9-foot rod. That's me, spinners.
Yeah, either way. That works great for bigger rivers and stuff like the Burl, where you might be handling much longer casts, and you have much bigger fish that you can finesse. But yeah, you can feel these blades going. But this setup here, this is damn near indestructible. The only thing that can happen with this that's bad is if you use it in water that's too deep for you to go over and push it down into your elbow, or get your water in your waders if you have to go too far down. My net, magnetic catch. So while the brass is not magnetic, the hook, I have picked a number of them up with my net by hitting the magnet on the hook. But in order to, I don't see that it dropped. I'm going to put a hook straight on this one because I did not bring. So I think I will put a bead on that one. Oh, this is another thing that I'm not so sure that it's for the fish, but that eyeball. If you've ever seen any thunder mist type lures, that's a very common lure out east for steelhead and fishing in the Niagara River. And then you got an eyeball. And this part, again, you know, I've done this thousands of times, so I know where I'm going. If you were to start this on your own, you're going to mangle a few feet of wire. It's going to take a while to get used to doing it, but realistically, it's not that difficult. I will bring the bottom of the lure where I want things to set up right to the edge. There's good. And I always make sure this is turned flat so that the ending loop is also flat and the spinner's tuned to have a same plane on the top loop and the bottom loop. But you go around, you make that perfect V again. You can see it's bent a little bit with this wire. You just do a little jerking with it. And you don't want to wrap around 4 extra wraps of wire. And if you're going to do this work, you can get that smaller dikes than this one. Again, it's just how much effort you want to put into this. You'll literally have to squeeze hard on every single cut you make with a 4-inch dike versus this 7-inch dike. And in this case, they cut like butter. The other one doesn't quite as much. So if we're going to put the hook on, but we want a piece of plastic on there, you got to put the piece of plastic on now. The piece of plastic goes on the hook. That needs to be short. You can see that that goes right through there. Feed the hook. Need a hand again there, just make it This little jig has a little notch for the hook to stay there so that the hook doesn't get wound around on it.
You normally would put a split ring on them?
Normally I would use a split ring because I like to be able to switch out hooks, sharpen them, change the plastics. For years, I didn't use a split hook though. There's absolutely no difference in fishing. That is very sharp, but I'll send that around. Did you get the idea here? That's a big one.
With the Siwash hooks, have you ever found these guys addicted fishing?
I use Siwash hooks where they're required by law because I'm close enough to get to the Minnesota shore too. So in Minnesota, when you're fishing their designated steelhead salmon runs, if they can even call them that compared to Wisconsin, then you got to use a Siwash. Because they only allow the single hook during the lake run seasons up there.
It's just a single.
All it is a big Siwash. It's a big single. There's no yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no smell to it, and there's no wide. It's the hook that's bent, not the shank. The big open hooks. This is about the heaviest size that I use, and that will put something up to about 3/4 of an ounce.
You ever fish Weber's up on the boys Gould Weber's? You get that fish gate, you walk down the hill.
Well, that's what Weber's is a landowner's name. I've been in every sort of that.
Hole there, something heavy like that would work.
Yeah, it's probably the sauna hole. And those are the landowners who restricted the path, their private access path. Yeah, you gotta be, they used to let you cut across their land and now they don't anymore. You still walk right down through a path that was on their own land, and for decades, it's been like that.
Well,
they had too much trash.
Between their cabins. Yeah.
Okay.
If there's people there, no. If there's somebody there, no.
I try to be mindful. I can tell you, I have never had a bad experience with a property owner in Wisconsin. I found that most people, if they're sitting there looking at you while you're going in, be a human being. Talk to them. They're interested in what you're doing. And if you ignore them, sometimes you get extra attention that you don't want. I can tell you that the laws are completely different in Minnesota. In Wisconsin, we're allowed to go around an obstruction, even high water, so long as we go out, go around the obstruction, and then immediately return to the water. It's never permissible in Wisconsin to access private property to get to a stream without permission from the landowner. But once you're in, you can go from bridge to bridge, you can walk back if you want, and you come across a giant oak tree across, you can go around and you can get in. You come to something that's too deep over your waders or too dangerous over your waders, that's an obstruction. You can get out, get to something shallower, keep going. In Minnesota, you may not touch a blade of grass. And if you come to an impasse, you are not permitted to hit the bank. And I have had some difficult landowner experiences in Minnesota, too. Nothing that was ever going to be a fight, but just cantankerous, tense conversations of, look, I know the rules. This is not your stream. I know it's your big house on the hill there, but even in Minnesota, the riparian right is clear, but they own the bank. They own a blade of grass on the bank. You touch it, it's trespassing. So we need to be very protective and grateful for the stream access that we do have in Wisconsin. I won't even use the word liberal. I will say it's a very democratic riparian right that we have that allows us to enjoy the awesome streams in our state. Questions about this? If you want to come up and take a look at the stuff I've got here, you're certainly more than welcome to. Gives you an idea of what goes into it.
Hey.
Take care, Bob.
I see you got some pink bodies. Yep, I do some color, and I think that matters most for. Yes, that's all lake run fish stuff. That's all lake run fish stuff. Same with the colors. So it really seemed like the guys this year, you really wanted to have spawn if you were going to clean up. That is an insert for, that's a tungsten insert for a bell. Oh, okay. And I don't have one in here.